frequently do we collect these stories? What would be the...
It ranges between about 3 months, which is a very committed organisation. You have to do it at least every year. That would be the absolute minimum time period. I think probably most common would be to do it about every 6 months, maybe at the beginning every 3 months. And it sounds a lot of work, doesn't it? But often it takes an hour and a half at a meeting to select the stories. So it doesn't have to be. And if every one person only collects 1 or 2 stories, then it's not such a burdensome task. Yeah?
There's always a focus on the stories emerging from the grassroots.
Yeah.
Don't the funders ever change significantly?
Well, this is, I mean, the model up here, yeah, the model up here was a project, a very basic project, which was aimed at the beneficiaries. The boundary partners were community members. But if you mapped out the structure for a capacity building project in which your boundary partners were other organisations, then the stories you collect would be from those organisations. So it's whoever your boundary partners are is who you collect stories from. It's easy for me to say that when talking to an after Sarah's talk, yeah.
It strikes me in the process that we went through now in determining which case we felt was the most significant change. You have to develop your own criteria.
Yes, but we create the criteria every time. This is deliberately what we call an inductive approach. Now there's 2 different approaches to evaluation. There's what we call, sorry for the jargon, deductive, which is like science reasoning, where you decide what the hypothesis is, or you decide what it is you want to know, and you prove whether it's happened or not. MSc is not of that way of thinking. MSc is about, really, if the one thing it answers is what were the unexpected outcomes, that's what it's really dealing with. Yeah? So the idea is forget your expected outcomes, go out and collect what's happening out there, and then look at it. So we don't want any criteria. We want them to emerge, and what is emerging is our values, and our values can then sharpen up what we think we're really trying to achieve. So it's deliberately inductive. Deliberately we don't set criteria in advance. In fact, if you set criteria in advance, you're not doing MSc. MSc is designed to surface criteria. Yeah, that's what it's all about. Yeah.
You know, as you said earlier, that it need not be a standalone. It is not standalone.
No, it's not standalone.
But then as users and practitioners, and this is another way of looking at things, inductive.
Inductive,
and,
yeah.
The conventional way has been inductive.
But they go together beautifully.
The question would be that over a period of time, are users likely to talk more about, more comfortable in this kind of a mode, which is perhaps more...
This is really good for community groups, for people who've never done any evaluation before. For beginners, this is the beginning of understanding what impact, what outcomes are. It's the beginning of understanding all that stuff.
Is it likely to lead to a bias against the deductive? Because that might sometimes be binding you down, toning you down.
I don't know. I don't think you're ever allowed to think you can get away with not doing deductive stuff, to be honest, in the world that we live in. I mean, ideally, I actually, at the bottom of my heart, I think, when I do lots of external evaluations. My company, we only do evaluation. We don't do any other type of consultancy. It's all monitoring and evaluation. And when I look repeatedly at the evaluations we do, I find that the most interesting stuff is about the unexpected outcomes. It's about the other stuff outside of what you expected that you learn that really gives us the most important information. It's always in the MSc stories, but I'm never allowed just to do MSc. I always have to collect the quantitative data and present it together, then people will hear the story.
And also for good reason.
Yeah, for good reason.
Also maybe important and useful.
Yeah, but the outcomes are always in the stories. They're not in the data, often. This is my learning. But you do use them together.
My understanding is that you're saying that this is an example for the community level, but you said that you have used it in other kinds of organizations. Could you later give us an example for that? Yeah,
sure. I mean, MSc's been used in 300 different types of organisations, any type of project. It's just to go into too deeply into the methodology. One of the steps we do is identifying domains of change. We normally have about 3 or 4. So you could have domains like change in, like Oxfam, for example, would do a lot of Oxfam Australia. They use MSc, and they don't work directly with any beneficiaries. They do lots of advocacy work, and they work with partner organisations to build their capacity to do work with beneficiaries. Their boundary partners are other organisations, NGOs and CBOs, community-based organisations, and advocacy policy partners. So when they collect MSc stories, their domains are changes in the capacity of our partners, changes in the capacity, changes in policy makers. And that is the domain that you use, and you collect story from a policymaker or from your NGO partner about how they've, about their capacity, not from the beneficiary at all. But then you might encourage the NGO to collect stories from the beneficiary and learn from it. It's just like the same sort of deal with boundary partners. It's, it's cascading. And MSc is the same thing. You collect MSc stories from your boundary partners. But you listen. The idea is you don't know what's in somebody's head until you ask them. It's not actually enough just to observe that you need to go out and say, well, Steve, I think I know what's important, but what do you think's important? And then you have to listen, and you have to let them tell their whole breath, not just a part of it. So that's what it's about.
In your experience, have you found that MSc always finds a silver lining? And what I'm trying to say
is it just appreciative? Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. And maybe it's just the examples that you've used. But,
yeah.
But I'm wondering if, when you're asking people to find, to talk about change, if they just intuitively look for the positive change. But I'm sure the way in which you train people to ask the questions would.
I think it's probably the other way around. We actually want to know what's worked. MSc is based on appreciative inquiry. It's based on the idea that the old school of thought is that you need to find out what the problems are, go and find out the problems and then address them. Well, there's a new school of thought around at the moment, which is don't just look at the problems, but look at what is working. In a desert, if nothing's growing except for one flower, find out how that flower is growing and do more of it. When nothing's working and something is, by God, find out why that thing is working. And that will give you quicker, instant results. So MSc is based on the idea of trying to find out what's working. However, it doesn't exclude lessons learned. But what we've learned is it takes a while to get your head around MSc. So we just run it as if it is all about positive stories until the day that somebody says, this is all well and good, but what about the negative stories? And then we go, fine, let's have another domain. Let's have a domain called lessons learned, and let's collect some stories about what's going wrong, and let's discuss them together and decide what to do differently. But we don't normally start there because it's too confronting. We do it once people have got used to story, when they've got used to analysing them, and then we bring in the negatives, and then it can get really crunchy. Yeah. But the idea of MSc is like it's very much, and it's worth, and this is in your notes actually at the back. This is a normal distribution. Yep, a normal distribution. Most evaluation techniques are interested in the averages. So we do surveys to find out the average experience, to report to people on roughly what's happening. I'm not knocking that methodology. I think it's got a place. But MSc doesn't do that at all. In fact, what it does is it's looking for the outer edges of experience. It's looking to see what's really amazing. What's the flower that's growing in the desert? Let's do more of that. And it's looking to see what's a terrible disaster. Let's move away from that. And it's all about usage, program improvement. So the fact is you quickly work out what we all agree, and it's we agree is really good. So there's, it's the definition of what success is your definition. And then we do more of it and we do less of that, you've got instant improvement. So it's really what we call a formative evaluation technique. It's really all about learning and program improvement. It's got a very high process use according to Michael Patton's definition of use. You learn an awful lot from being part of this process, and you can apply it pretty quickly to tweaking your program. Now,